Too yeah, no. Everyone should come home with some candy boy talking funny at me. Boy, good to see you. Hey man, how you doing? Good to see you. What do we got now? I got an order here somewhere.
I don't have anything tonight.
How we doing today?
You have it?
I have your food ready.
Thanks, Tiffany.
Hey, you welcome.
Wow.
Right off.
$40 tip.
Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you.
I think you did well.
Do you have any concerns about your voice, your performance tonight? Do you have any concerns about your performance?
No, it's hard to debate a liar. New York Times pointed out he lied 26 times. Big lies. You can tell it.
Are you suffering from a cold? Your campaign said that you're sick.
Commander-in-Chief. But the good news is the American people will save this country, and we are going to elect President Trump this November. So overwhelming win for President Trump.
And Biden is going to New York tomorrow. Do you think he's going to have a good welcome? What do you think about this trip?
Democrats are in full panic mode. No matter who you talk to across the country, no matter how desperately they try to spin this, coming up with excuses, which they're already doing. It was a bad night for Joe Biden, and this is a bad presidency, and the American people see that. And New York, what's interesting is President Trump holds just 6 points behind in New York. That gap is still going to close. This is a traditional blue state that the momentum is moving in President Trump's direction. We picked up those 5 congressional seats in New York, and he's going to do very well on the ballot in New York State.
And then one more. Nikki Haley just tweeted that it's time to replace Joe Biden. They're going to replace him. But I heard you say that they're not going to, that he's going to be the Democratic nominee. Do you think there's no chance of them doing something right before the DNC?
Look, Joe Biden is on the ballot this November. We will defeat Joe Biden. Democrats, they are getting desperate because they know what a disaster it was, including Biden insiders and Biden campaign people who have told folks on background that it's been a disaster and avoided the spin room because they know it was just a historic failure for Joe Biden. But look, Donald Trump is going to defeat Joe Biden. Joe Biden is the sitting president of the United States, and Donald Trump's going to beat him this November.
One question here.
I mean, it's desperate. It's full-time panic mode for Democrats. That first 20 minutes when Joe Biden froze up, it's clear he's unfit to be president of the United States. He's unfit to be an elected official or any big professional responsibility. And the American people saw that on stark display.
What was it like inside the watch party tonight? You were with several other potential VP contenders. How did you guys interact with each other, and what were some moments that stood out inside tonight?
We're all friends. I know all the other names that are in the mix. I've worked with all of them. I've known some of them for a long time. Went to college with Vivek. I've worked with Tim Scott, with Marco on many issues, with JD, have gotten to know Doug Burgum. So it's a team effort. We're all working very hard to support President Trump, and we're proud to serve as surrogates. And I know that we're all great friends. What was clear in that room was just watching the failure of Joe Biden, those first 20 minutes that were just catastrophic for Joe Biden. He is unfit to be commander-in-chief versus the strength of President Trump, who was able to talk about so much of his effective policies, whether it was border security, whether it was economic growth, whether it was peace through strength when it comes to national security, foreign policy issues.
Was there anything you heard President Trump honed in on more?
I'm sorry?
Was there anything you hope that President Trump honed in on more during the debate, or anything you wish he did better?
You know, I would say the moderators did a very good job asking questions, and I was hesitant with CNN, which is very biased in their coverage of President Trump, very biased in how they interview all Republicans, but their questions were good questions. They were policy questions, and they let the candidates answer the questions without editorializing. I think that's very important to have an effective, good debate for the American people to see. So I think that, you know, President Trump had the opportunity to talk about all the issues, and I'm looking forward to him continuing to communicate with the American people, which he loves doing, versus they have to hide Joe Biden. If this is what Joe Biden, this is his performance after a week of being in debate camp, that's catastrophic for him and embarrassment.
Lisa, do Reuters.
Okay, one question. You mentioned a lot of questions, a lot of topics. Something good. Is there anything?
I'm good.
Have you had any contacts from allies or other countries, you know, expressing concern over this performance and asking to sort of for reassurance?
Again, I have no diplomatic conversations to speak to, but I will just echo again that world leaders know this president, and they know this is a president who has worked at the cross-section of foreign policy for decades, and they know and believe in the policies that he and this administration are pursuing.
Well, leaving aside the punditry and electioneering, what was your reaction? What was the reaction of this building?
Matt, it's really not appropriate for me to be offering any commentary on something like a debate from up here, and I think you've been covering the State Department long enough to know that.
The question's got to be asked.
I appreciate you asking it, I guess, but I'm going to politely. No, Matt. I do appreciate any question you ask, but I will politely. I will politely decline to comment on.
So to follow up on something, you've heard absolutely nothing. You're not aware of anything that any foreign government has said since Thursday night to you or to anyone you're not aware of about what happened.
That is correct.
No.
Correct.
Okay.
One more question on this.
Go ahead.
And this building, have you guys given any guidance to your top diplomats who are serving in a political capacity because they've been picked by this president in terms of how they should be answering questions about if Biden will remain the nominee from their interlocutors overseas?
People who are employees of the State Department, whether they are Schedule C, whether they are a presidentially nominated person in that position, are well aware of what their roles and responsibilities are in speaking to domestic politics in any kind of official capacity.
So that's not a yes or a no? That's
Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, the statement that Congressman Doggett put out.
Yeah.
Does the president feel like members, the Democratic congressmen, should be able to speak their minds on this, or does he think, calling for him to withdraw is hurting the party writ large?
I mean, look, that's something about the Democratic Party that we really respect. It is a big tent party. Many people are going to have their opinions. We are going to have our disagreements, and that is what is important. And we really respect other people's opinions and thoughts. I think that's what makes, this party different, right, than the other side. Certainly, we see that with how it's playing out in Congress, or how it tends to play out in Congress. So the congressman is going to have his opinion. He's going to have his thoughts. That's for him to speak to. We are not, this is not a president that's about his personal politics. That is not this president is all about. He doesn't care only about himself. That is not what this president is all about. And I also read out some supportive statements that we've heard from leaders of Congress. Former Speaker Pelosi, I read out what she laid out. I read out what Congressman Clyburn has said. And I think that matters as well. And you all have heard from multiple supporters over the past couple of days since Thursday. And I think that's important as well.
And just to be clear, the president has not spoken to either Senator Schumer or Leader Jeffries?
What I can say is that the president plans to speak to them this week. I don't have anything beyond.
Even though it's been 5 days,
Well,
I think they would have spoken.
No, I hear you. I addressed this moments ago. The president was on the road for 2.5 days, did 4 states. His advisors, his high-level White House officials were talking to congressional members, as some of you have reported over the past couple of days. I think that's important. They have regularly engaged, not just with congressional members, with governors, with mayors, and then there's the campaign that does it on a political level, right? They've had regular calls. I think some of you have reported on that as well. Now this week, the president is going to take some time and talk to those congressional members. And as I stated, also to Democratic governors tomorrow.
I just wanted to go back to the Representative Doggett's statement.
Yeah.
Part of his statement, he said that Biden staying in the race could kind of work against helping to save democracy. So I know you said it was a big tent party, people have their opinions, but how do you corral Democrats when there are members of the party who believe that about the president staying in the race? And do you have a response to that specifically?
Yeah, look, this is a president. He jumped into this election, this I can talk about obviously, in in 2020, and I remind you all that he beat the other guy in 2020. He won in 2020. That's why he's president. But he jumped in because of democracy, right? He jumped in because of what was happening, because he believed he needed to do everything that he can to protect our democracy and now protect our freedoms because of what happened with Roe v. Wade. Obviously, we don't agree with that. What we believe is that this is a president that has had, that is going to continue to fight for democracy, and that's going to continue to focus on making sure that, we get Roe v. Wade into law, right? Make sure that IVF is not taken away from families. Make sure that contraception is not taken away from families. Make sure that we fight for our voting rights, right? There are so many things that we need to continue to fight for. And at the end of the day, this is a president that has delivered, working closely with Congress and doing some of these things in a bipartisan way. And I think the reason why that he's been able to get some of these legislation done, whether it's the CHIPS and Science Act, the Veterans Act, the bipartisan infrastructure legislation, is because of who he is and because of how he has that experience to work across the aisle. That doesn't happen with everybody, and this president has been able to do that. So we're going to continue to do that work. Guys, I'll see you tomorrow. All right, thanks everybody.
Hi, I'm Marianne Williamson. President Biden deserves our respect and our compassion and our gratitude. But the debate on Thursday night made it very clear that the Democrats need a new nominee on the ballot in November. The nominating process for the Democratic Party needs to begin again. We need to recalibrate, and we need to do so quickly. We need to have the conversation over the next 2 months that we should have been having over the last year and a half. A serious dialogue about what's happening in this country and what it will take to beat Donald Trump. Today, I throw my hat in the ring, and I look forward to a meaningful campaign and an open convention in August. It's imperative that this new process not be guided by media and party elites who are playing in the background, engineering, manipulating anything. This must be a genuinely democratic process. I've received 500,000 votes in the primary season, and over the last year, I have been traveling this country, and I have seen up close and personal the ravages of body and soul that dot the landscape of our nation. I know how much people are desperate for change. And not only did I bear witness to problems, I articulated solutions that I know speak to the hearts and the minds of people on the left and on the right and in the middle. With my candidacy, I submit to the American people that a better way forward is possible, and it's also necessary. I am the candidate who both foresaw the crisis in our party and had the courage to act on it. I have seen firsthand the economic anxiety that invisibly shackles millions of Americans. I have spoken to it consistently over the last year and a half, and I'm deeply aware that when we take the decency and the intelligence and the yearning for change in the hearts of so many millions of Americans, we will have a political breakthrough that is historic in this country. And yes, we will win the presidency in November. But we will not win by repackaging the status quo, because the status quo has failed the majority of the American people. We will win by being honest about what's really happening in this country, with an agenda that improves people's material conditions over the next 4 years. Let me say this again, we will win in November. Donald Trump has no plans to improve anybody's life over the next 4 years. That's our job, and we must do it. We will win by standing for fundamental new beginnings, delivering on a transformational vision of Medicare for all, tuition-free higher education and tech school, and a guaranteed living wage. We will win with an economic bill of rights, establishing an economy that works for people, rather than millions of people living their lives working for the economy. We will win with a plan to wage peace as effectively as we wage war, repudiating the undue influence of a forever war machine. We will win by committing to the end of poverty. We will win with a historic commitment to America's children. We will win by treating climate change as the global emergency that it is. We will win by putting the safety of America's food supply and the health of the American people before soulless, ill-gotten profits. And we will win by dismantling America's war on drugs, building a world-class network of recovery for every addict. We will win by offering the American people a much better deal than what they are receiving now. Let me repeat, we will win in November. And in order to do that, we need to revive the spirit of the American people. Do we need changes in policies? Yes, we do. But that alone will not be enough, for there is hopelessness that is rampant in this country. For the last 40 years, I've worked up close and personal with people whose lives were in trouble, and I know something about restoring faith in what's possible. As a writer, as a speaker, as an entrepreneur, and as a nonprofit activist, I've reached millions of people who were looking for hope that things could be better in their lives. I have helped to provide that hope, and that's exactly what I'll do as a candidate, and it's what I will do as President of the United States. The American people need to rise up now. We need to make it very clear that we are ready to meet this moment in our history. We are ready to forge a new coalition of decency and love. We are ready to say no to all forces of dictatorial power, whether they be political or economic. For we realize that a government of the people and by the people and for the people has been replaced by a government of the donors, by the lobbyists, and for the corporations. We, the people, will no longer tolerate this. I'm ready, and I hope you'll join me. I want to go to Washington to co-create with you a new chapter in American history. It will start with our victory in November, but that will be just the beginning. The political industrial complex has had its way with us for far too long, and it's our turn now. Please go to Marianne2024.com, do what you can, and let's get started.
You mentioned that sometimes that candidates have a bad first debate. There's been a lot of discussion going around, and of course no decision yet, but that maybe there isn't a second debate.
So I want to be super careful. That's something for the campaign to respond to, but I do believe they did respond to this, and I do believe they have responded to this, and they said that there's going to be another debate, but that's something for them to speak to. And I will just quote what President Obama stressed, right? Bad debate nights happen. Trust me, I know. And then he praised President Biden's leadership and his agenda of fighting for the middle class, our freedoms, and the rule of law. And you heard the president speak to the rule of law just last night. And so certainly that will continue. But you've heard from a former president about this particular issue. Go ahead, Michael.
That's great. Obama was 51 during that.
I kind of knew you would say that.
Debate.
I knew you would say that. But he's not the only one. He's not. It has happened in the past. First debates for incumbents, and sometimes it's not their best.
I know you've said a couple times that you want to turn the page.
Yeah.
The issue, I think, the core issue here is that you can't turn the page on age.
Yeah.
Aging decline is a one-way street.
Well,
so
right.
At the end of the day,
right.
If these are the questions you're getting now, what are the questions you're going to be getting in 2 years or 3 years?
I have thoughts about 2 years, 3 years from now, but look,
How can you or anyone say that you have confidence that he can be in this job at that time?
Look, here's what I would say to that. We are not turning the page on age. That's not what we're doing. We understand. We get that, right? The president said, I am not a young man. He said that. We get that. We understand how the American people feel. What we want to continue to do is deliver for the American people. That's what we want to see. That's what the president wants to do. And that's the turning of page. Let's continue on the successes, on the unprecedented successes that this president has had. And on issues that majority of Americans care about, healthcare, economy, those are things that they care about. Democracy, freedom, fighting for the rights for women to make decisions on their bodies. That's what the president wants to continue to that's the turning of the page. But we get it. I'm not taking away from that. I don't want to do that. That is not, I do not want to walk off this podium and that's what you all think. We're not doing that. And the president doesn't want you all to do that. But he can do the job.
I just wanted to get to your answer to Raquel a few moments ago. You talked about there being a lot at stake. Which I think
I'm trying to be mindful.
I'm also trying to phrase the question in a way that you can answer.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
But I think millions and millions of Americans would agree with that assessment that there's a lot at stake.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree. Right. That's what I said. It's not just diplomats, but it's also Americans here.
Right, and the president and you and others in the administration have acknowledged he didn't have a good night at the debate. Yeah. Is within his reaction to his own performance, does he think he let people down?
Look, this is certainly a president
that I will say, and if you know Joe Biden, you know him as a senator and as vice president, he's very sensitive to how people feel, right? And he's very aware of that. I think he has that IQ that is certainly incredibly important as a president, to be able to feel people's pains, feel people's concern, and be able to listen to them directly. And you see that. You see him do that anytime you see him engage with everyday people, Americans. And I think that's what makes this president so unique. And I think also because he's dealt with so much tragedy and knows what that feels like. And, you know, I have not asked him specifically that question, but he understands the concerns. He understands what people saw. And that's why he's spoken to it multiple times. And he's spoken about his age, for example, multiple times, not just this past Friday. And he gets it. He gets it. We get it. And so what we're going to do is continue to look forward, continue to work on behalf of the American people. And there is a record here. There is a record here that we can speak to. There is a record here that matters to majority of Americans. We were able to turn some things around, whether it's the pandemic, the economy, expanding healthcare. All of those things matter to the American people. And so that's going to be certainly our focus. But, you know, the president gets it, guys. He does. He gets what people saw and how people felt. I really can't. I gotta continue taking questions from the back, and I'm already being pulled. Go ahead, Phil.
Hi. Is President Biden considering stepping down?
Absolutely not. And you heard, I believe, directly from the campaign as well.
Given the groundswell of concern from fellow Democrats, from donors, from supporters, doesn't he owe it to the American public to reflect on whether he should step down?
I mean, look, very much into Sung-Min's question and my answer to her question, where he had an opportunity to talk to supporters. He's done it a couple times at this point and laid out what happened on that night. Talked about how he understands, and it was not his best night. He understands that it is fair for people to ask that question. But we cannot forget his record and what he's been able to do. We cannot forget how he has been able to deliver for the American people for almost 4 years. That matters too. And he has the most historic record administration, the most in modern politics, and that should matter. And he wants to continue to do that work. And, you know, a lot of what's on his agenda is very much popular with majority of the American people, whether it's continuing to build a strong economic policies. He's done that. Creating new jobs, he's done that. 15 million jobs. He wants to work on that and continue to do that. And so he wants to continue to deliver, expanding healthcare. All of these things he believes is important. Majority of Americans believe it's important. And his record, he wants to make sure that people do not forget about the record that he's been able to lay on behalf of the American people.
Is there anything, Karine, that would change his mind?
Look, I cannot lay out something that would change the president's mind. He has been very clear, and he's going to continue to build on the unprecedented record that he's been able to lay out for the American people. That's his focus right now.
Can you also clarify Sung-Min's question?
Sure.
I mean, how is it that the president was still tired 12 days after returning from Europe, had a cold, but then went to the Waffle House, and then the following day staged such a huge comeback that he gave those North Carolina remarks? Like, help us understand.
Have you had a cold before?
Of course I've had a
Okay,
cold before.
so
but
you
we-
probably, well, come on, Jackie. Let's be very, let's be.
12 days after he returned, though.
But
and
you
he
also,
blamed jet lag yesterday.
hold on a second. There's a cold, there's a jet lag. You combine that. He continues to work on for the American people, day in and day out, around the clock. Things happen. Things happen. And the cold thing is something that you all pointed out during his debate. We didn't even point that out. You all pointed out when you heard his voice being hoarse, because he knew he had to push through. He knew he has to power through. That's what presidents do. If you care about this country, you don't care about yourself, you care about the American people, you care about delivering for this country, you care about how you're going to continue to work every day in and day out, you push through. We've all do that.
Because all these Democrats
We've
who are
all
saying
do
they want to
that.
see him,
But
it speaks to that.
But we didn't share that information ahead of time. You all asked what was going on, and then we shared that information. We didn't use that before the debate. You all asked, hey, is he under the weather? And we confirmed that he was under the weather. He pushed through. That's what this president does. He is going to continue to fight for the American people. So he pushed through it. I think anybody who does that, not just the president, should be commended. And he also said, you heard him say this on Friday, when you get knocked down, you get back up. That's what you saw.
Is there any discussion that if the president were to suspend his campaign, that he would also resign? Are there any discussions about the vice president assuming his duties?
Absolutely not. Go ahead.
Okay, and hold the main stage. All right, sir, here you go. Oh, sorry.
Hey, folks, I just found out that if I go around and maybe I can come back and do it, shake hands with all of you, which I want to do. There's 7,000 people waiting at the gate to get in. So if I don't finish this, they can't come in. So maybe if you're hanging around, I'm going to sneak back out if that's okay, all right? But thank you, thank you, thank you. Remember that famous expression, they also serve who only stand and wait. I remember when our son was deployed, my wife would go to stand in the sink in the morning drinking her coffee and saying that prayer, worrying, always concerned, and all of you. So we owe you. This could not be done without the family support. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We love you, and I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Thank you. You got me, man. I'm not going anywhere. All right. All right, I'll come back out when they open the gate, okay? Thank you, thank you, thank you. One last thing. You know, I used to think when I was a senator, there were always congestion on the highways. There's no congestion anymore. None. We go on the highway, there's no congestion. And so the way they get me to stop talking, they'll say, we just shut down all the roads, Mr. President. You're going to lose all the votes if you don't get in. But anyway, I'll be back out. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you. Thank you. Now you probably heard we had a little debate last week. Can't say it was my best performance. But ever since then, there's been a lot of speculation. What's Joe going to do? Is he going to stay in the race? Is he going to drop out? What's he going to do? Well, here's my answer. I am running and going to win again. Because we're going to go. Folks, I'm the sitting president of the United States of America in no small part because of you. Not a joke. In 2020, you came through for me. I'm the nominee of the Democratic Party. I'm the nominee of this party because millions of Democrats like you just voted for me in primaries all across America. You voted for me to be your nominee, no one else. You, the voters did that. And despite that some folks don't seem to care who you voted for, well, guess what? They're trying to push me out of the race. Well, let me say this as clearly as I can. I'm staying in the race. I'll beat Donald Trump. I will beat him again in 2020. Well, by the way, we're going to do it again in 2024. I learned long ago, when you get knocked down, you get back up. letting one 90-minute debate wipe out 3.5 years of work. As the governor said, I've led this nation from the depths of pandemic to the strongest economy in the world, and that's literally true. And I and you are not finished yet. Now, you probably also noticed a lot of discussion about my age. I know I look 40. I keep seeing all those stories about I'm being too old. Let me say something. I was too old. I wasn't too old to create over 15 million new jobs. To make sure 21 million Americans are insured under the Affordable Care Act. To beat Big Pharma, the first firm to ever do that, and lower the cost of insulin to $35 per single. Was I too old to relieve student debt for nearly 5 million Americans and grow the economy? Too old to put the first black woman on the Supreme Court of the United States of America? To sign the Respect for Marriage Act? Was I too old to sign the most significant gun safety law in 30 years? To pass the biggest climate bill in the history of the world, not here, the history of the world. But then, my critics say, sure, but he did all that. But that was in the past. What about now? Well, how about the 200,000 jobs we announced yesterday? So let me ask you, what do you think? You think I'm too old to restore Roe v. Wade, the law of the land? You think I'm too old to ban assault weapons again? To protect Social Security and Medicare? To get child care, elder care for working families who need the nation? To make billionaires finally start to pay something beyond 8.2% of the tax rate? Let me ask you, you think I'm too old to beat Donald Trump? I can hardly wait. Anyway.
Some of the NATO leaders have expressed concern about the president. It's hard to hear. Some of the NATO leaders have expressed concerns about the president. The leader of Poland, for example, has said he believes the president should step down. Of course, Poland is a country that has particularly high stakes in the continuation and the strength of NATO.
All right, so a couple of things. Look, I'm going to let world leaders speak for themselves. And I've shared this before, and I've said moments ago, world leaders have seen him obviously in action. He has personal engagement with them. You have German Chancellor Scholz, who said, I think that Joe Biden is someone who is very clear, who knows exactly what he is doing, and who is one of the most experienced politicians in the world, especially when it comes to international politics. You've had the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu. I've had more than a dozen extended phone conversation with President Biden. He also came on a visit to Israel during wartime, which is an historic first, and I found him very clear and very focused. Look, again, he's made the alliance much stronger, and that's because of what this president has been able to do. I'll give you one more. Brett McGurk recently did an interview about the 5-hour stretches the president spent in the Situation Room with the president, seeing his judgment on full display, handling incredibly difficult situations. So, and then you've heard from the chair of Joint Chiefs, Mark Milley, who spent hours with President Biden every week to speak to last year when he retired, saying engage with him frequently, an alert sound, does his homework, reads the papers, reads all the read-ahead material, and is very, very engaged in issues of every serious matters of war and peace and life and death. That's what I've experienced. That's what many of my colleagues have experienced. And this is what also world leaders have experienced themselves in those personal engagement.
I think the concern is that for a lot of these leaders, they hadn't seen him in a while. So when they saw him before versus when they saw him recently, there was a big change.
G7, world leaders were there. He engaged with them. He interacted with them. Normandy, there were world leaders who were there. He engaged with them. He interacted with them. And so he has seen world leaders. He has engaged with them. And so now he'll get to do that again at the NATO summit. And so the president's looking forward to doing that. I think it's going to be an important moment for all of us. And I mean, look, guys, we are stronger and have stronger relationship with our partners and allies because of what this president did. And with age brings experience and wisdom, and that's what we have seen with this president, because he was a senator for 36 years, because he was vice president for 8 years. And I think that matters. That wisdom and that experience that the president has brought has been important, and an important factor as we talk about world leaders and what he's been able to do. I think
to the governor's meeting, the president made a joke that it was something with his brain in that meeting. And very respectfully, is now the time for the president to be making those kinds of jokes when the country is watching him for his cognitive abilities?
He made a lighthearted joke, to your point, right? I'm glad you brought that question to me in that way, because that's exactly what it was. Many people who were in the meeting even stated it. They're publicly said that he was joking, and added, all kidding aside, right after. Look, you've heard the president bring some humor in the past. That is just who he is. And look, you're right, it is a serious moment. It is. There's a lot at stake. The president takes that very seriously. And I think that's why he's worked so hard over the last 3.5 years to get things done for the American people. You're right, democracy is at stake, freedoms is at stake, and the president's going to continue to work on those very things.
Feel the weight of everyone looking at him for the words, the cognitive abilities. Like, does he know? I mean, I know he likes to joke, but it's a tough moment.
Every president of the United States feels the weight of the job, period. Every president, because they're not just president, obviously they're commander-in-chief, they feel the weight of the job. And he understands that he has to deliver and will continue to deliver every day.
Does he understand, like, the slip-ups and the sort of mistakes that he makes? The scrutiny is, it's intense. I mean, is he aware? I don't know, is he aware of this?
He said in the question that Annie asked me, right? He understands. He understands that, he said it himself. Don't speak as smoothly as I do. I'm not as a good debater as you used to be. I mean, he understands what people sees. He talked very frankly and very honestly about the debate and what people saw. He spoke to it.
That acknowledgement has only come after the debate. This is not something he has been forthright about ahead of the debate. Going into the debate, he did not say, I'm not as good a debater as I used to be. That's an acknowledgement that's only coming once it's evidently clear.
Just a couple things. After the debate, the day after, he spoke to his debate performance. So I just want to be really clear about that. He has spoken to his age. He has. I would just run the tape, look back. He has spoken about it and has acknowledged what people see and what Americans feel. He has acknowledged that. So that is very, very much true. He had a bad night. And he's acknowledged and taken ownership of that. If you heard the 2 radio interviews, he talked about that almost extensively in some ways, right? And discussed that and talked about that. And so, anyway, what else? I don't think you've asked the question.
No, yeah. Is the president expected to hold more meetings either on the phone or in person with Democratic leaders like we saw with these governors and as we saw with Leader Jeffries?
So look, the president is looking forward to having more discussions with elected officials, with supporters as we move forward. Obviously, the American people continue to engage. That's something that he's going to continue to do, and that's something he always looks forward to. Certainly, I don't have anything to read out or call out on his calendar, but that is something that the president continues to do, will do, and looks forward to hearing directly, obviously engaging with Americans, and he'll do that.
Do you think that Biden should remain as your party's nominee?
Well, he's definitely the nominee, there's no doubt about it, and he already won the nomination, so if there were to be any change, it would have to come from him.
Yeah, but what do you think? I mean, do you think he should step aside?
Well, I don't have anything further to help illuminate the situation at this point.
The senators who are up for election, they're going to have a lot of input. I'm anxious to hear from them and anxious to hear from their conversation with the president if they've had that.
Yeah. Do you have confidence that he can beat Donald Trump?
I believe the Democratic coalition is quite capable of beating Donald Trump.
What about Biden? Are you concerned about Biden's chances in November?
At the moment, President Biden is leading that coalition. So yes, I do. Is it a little steeper climb today than it was a few weeks ago? Yeah, but We have a long way to go between now and November.
But if he does not meet that test, is it time to move on, replace him with somebody else?
I believe that we have to have a family conversation if that test is not met.
All right, Sung Ming.
Thank you. I just wanted to get a clarification on the letter that was sent last night.
Sure, absolutely.
From Dr. O'Connor. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it didn't seem to explicitly describe the nature of Dr. Kennard's meeting with Dr. O'Connor. So can you say whether that one meeting was related to care for the president himself?
I can say that it was not.
It was not. Okay, great. And can I just ask why that information that was released last night just wasn't said at the briefing yesterday?
Well, no. Actually, a lot of what is in the letter was said at the briefing, to be very, very clear. I said many of the things that were laid out in the letter was actually repeated right here behind this lectern at this podium yesterday. It was what
said that.
Hold on. I said many of the things, and we got clarification, obviously, from Dr. O'Connor, but it was in line with what I said. When I said only 3, right? I said only 3 visits that this particular doctor had. I said a neurologist. What I was not able to confirm is the name, and the reason why is because we do not share private information. That is something that we respect, and we wanted to make sure that we protected our consultants here that work with the White House Medical Unit, their security as well. And so that is the one thing that I was not able to confirm. Obviously, Dr. O'Connor's letter confirms that, but we had to get permission from Dr. Kennard and also the president in order to put that information. And it is not normal, and that also states that in Dr. O'Connor. But many of the things that I said right here at this podium is in the letter.
And can I just also ask a little, this is the second time in less than a week where the briefing had prompted a need for later clarification on questions about the president's health. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to...
So I disagree. I disagree, Sung Ming. It's not. Yesterday, a lot of the things that I said right here in this briefing room, I know you were not in the briefing room, it's in the letter. It was in the letter. It was being incorrectly assumed and insinuated that the president had seen Dr. Kennard more than 3 times. I said that it was only 3 times that the president had seen a neurologist. I didn't confirm the name, but I did say it was only 3 times. It was being incorrectly assumed and insinuated that the president was being treated for Parkinson's. I said right here that the president was not being treated for Parkinson's. I actually went a step further and said he wasn't taking medication for Parkinson's. I said that right here. It was also being assumed and insinuated that Dr. Kennard was someone who only worked on Parkinson's when in fact he's a general neurologist. That was something that Dr. O'Connor was actually able to confirm, that he was a general neurologist, not in fact a general neurologist. And we also wanted to just wanted to set the record straight. And so, you know, it is important, we believe it was important to all of you. I actually even said here at the podium, if there was more information that we could provide, we would do that. We would do that. And we did. But many of the things that I said right here is in the letter. Is in the letter.
And are you guys just not, since February, testing President Biden for Parkinson's or for dementia? Because if he gets a bad result, it's all over that day.
Again, as I've said many times before, the president has had a fulsome, comprehensive, what we shared with you was comprehensive, but he's had a full physical. We've shown the results of those physicals this past 3 years. We showed it just 4 months ago. And it is in line with what we have done, similar to President Obama, similar to George W. Bush. We are committed to continue to be transparent. We are committed to continue to show the results of those physicals. And look, it's the president's medical team that makes the decision. We are not, with all due respect, you're not a doctor, I'm not a doctor. It is the president's medical unit that makes a decision on what the president needs.
Not a doctor, just play one on TV. But I know
that's
that
scary.
that is scary. But I know that, especially as adults get into their 80s, health conditions can pop up more than just once a year when he's getting his physical. I think if my wife saw me on TV misspeaking or saying the wrong thing or seeing a change in my appearance, she would probably say, let's go to a doctor just to make sure that you are okay, you have a family, you have an important job. Why doesn't anybody in the president's family urge him just to go to get checked out to say the coast is clear?
Okay, so just to step back just a little bit, because I think you weren't in the briefing room last week. I don't want to go backwards, but just to share a little bit about that night. The president said it was a bad night. He talked about it. He had a cold, right? He talked about his schedule, right, being abroad. And so we've spoke about what that night was like for him. And we understand what the American people saw, what you all saw. We've spoken to that. And I also would say, and I think you know this, Peter, you've covered a couple of administrations at this point, that the president, every president, has a White House medical unit that is with him 24/7, that is available to him 24/7. That is unlike any other American, right? That is not the norm. That is uncommon. Just down on the other side of the colonnade is where the medical unit is. And I did share that the president checks in while he's exercising with his doctor a couple times a week. And so he has that. He has something that majority of Americans, all Americans I would probably argue, don't have, which is a full medical unit that is with him at all times. And he gets a full physical, annual physical that we share with all of you. And that is very different than an everyday American who sometimes they're lucky if they can go get a physical. They have to get into a car. They have to take public transportation. The president has, again, a medical unit that's with him here at the White House and travels with him.
So I guess the question is just, you're saying this is not a situation where you would rather just not know if there is an issue with the president, because if he does get a bad result, it is all over. He has to leave office right away. He can't run for re-election.
First of all, it's a hypothetical, right? That you're giving me a hypothetical. But I will also say, just to clear this up, the White House medical unit, his doctor, they don't believe that he needs anything more than what we have been able to provide, a full, detailed, very comprehensive physical that he had 4 months ago. It is their decision to make. It's not yours. It's not mine. It's the White House medical unit. Get it.
To follow up on something you were saying again about congressional outreach, has the president spoken to, does he plan to speak with any of those that have publicly called for him to go?
Look, I don't have a list of people that the president's going to call. He's going to engage with congressional members. That's something that he's going to do. I can say, I'm sure folks here in his Office of Legislative Affairs has had regular communication with everyone. I just don't have a list of who he's going to speak to. But the president is always willing to speak to people who agree with him and don't agree with him. You know that about him. If you've covered him, he's very much that type of president. I just don't want to get ahead of his decision on who he's going to call and how that's going to look.
One thing I don't think we've gotten public clarification about yet. In the interview Friday night, he was asked, did you watch the debate? And he said, I don't think I did, no. Did he watch the full debate, or what of it has he watched?
That's a good question. I never followed up with him, and I meant to. I have not asked him that question. I was there in the room when he was being asked that question. I just never followed up. That is something that, we could follow up with him on. I have not. Okay. I'm sure he's seen clips. I just haven't asked him that full question.
One other thing that's come up.
It's getting round the clock coverage, right? From all of you.
One other thing that's come up in the last little bit, the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, I don't know if you've seen this, issued a statement a little while ago saying in part, in recent weeks, Iranian government actors have sought to opportunistically take advantage of ongoing protests regarding the war in Gaza, a playbook we've seen other actors use over the years. We've observed actors tied to Iran's government posing as activists online, seeking to encourage protests and even providing financial support to protesters. She goes on later to urge Americans to remain vigilant as they engage online with accounts and actors they don't personally know. But that's a pretty big charge to make, that Iran may be trying to influence these protests in the streets of the United States.
So yes, I know what you're speaking of, what the DNI warned about. Obviously, for any specifics, I would have to refer you back to Director Haynes and her statement. But broadly speaking here, just bear with me for a second, Iran is seeking to opportunistically take advantage of protest. So I want to echo the DNI's remarks today. Americans across the political spectrum acting in good faith have sought to express their own independent views on the conflict in Gaza. The freedom to express diverse views when done peacefully is essential to our democracy. At the same time, the U.S. government has a duty to warn Americans about foreign malign influences activities. This is important to help Americans guard against efforts by foreign powers to take advantage of or co-opt their legitimate protest activities. We will continue to provide these warnings as they arise. And today I just want to convey a firm message from here to Iran and any other foreign actor that seeks to conduct these types of influence activities, meddling in our politics and seeking to stoke division is unacceptable. And we will continue to expose attempts to undermine our democracy and our society just as we are today. That is something that we will continue to do. The U.S. government will continue to vigorously support and defend Americans in their exercise of their First Amendment rights to protest and express political views peacefully. At the same time, we will continue to warn against expose foreign efforts to meddle in our internal affairs and attempt to amplify conflict. The former is an essential part of the robust functioning democracy. The latter is a threat, and it will not be tolerated.
And the president's been read into all this.
He's been
no
briefed.
problem with it being shared publicly.
He's been briefed. He's been read in. He is aware. And we believe, as I just stated here, it is our duty. It is our duty here as the U.S. government to share that.
Well, folks, again, the world is on fire. That's true today. It was true before the debate. So just a couple little quotes here. Last week, President Biden claimed he put NATO together. I did not learn that tidbit in history when I was in school. Maybe y'all did. But that's what Biden claimed. He put NATO together. And then his next quote, he shut Putin down. I'm sorry, when did we get Vladimir Putin out of Ukraine? So again, a lot of confusion on the world stage on what President Biden is actually doing as our commander-in-chief. So bottom line, folks, the truth is he has abandoned our partners, he's abandoned our allies, and he has made the world less safe. And all we have to do is take a look at the results of the Biden presidency. He's been withholding weapons from Israel, our single democratic ally in the Middle East. We have seen him basically invite Putin into Ukraine by saying, go ahead, a minor incursion, no big deal. And one that he will be forever remembered by is the failed Afghanistan withdrawal, where we saw 13 of our service members killed at Abbey Gate in those final days, leaving families wondering what the heck is going on in our country. We see China also increasing their aggression all around the world and coming together in a new axis of evil with Iran and Russia. So, folks, it's clear that President Biden is the abandoner-in-chief. And we really need strong leadership right now. Again, we have the world on fire. We need to extinguish the flames, and that means we need a new leader in the White House.
I hope
it's the 75th anniversary, it's here in DC, obviously, but what does the success look like for Biden, given everything that is going on in kind of the debate aftermath? Kind of, what is he measuring?
So I'll say this, and I've said this many times before as it relates to foreign leaders. And look, I'll say that the foreign leaders have had an opportunity to see what the president has been able to do in the last 3.5 years. They've seen that certainly up close and personal. the last 3 years, and they know that they are dealing with a president who has been effective and has been able to get things done. I just talked about NATO and the president's leadership and how we've been able to strengthen NATO, make sure that we invigorated the NATO alliance, and that we've been able to see in the last 3.5 years. So the president wants to continue to strengthen that partnership and strengthen those alliances. Obviously, it's not going to just be NATO allies here. We're going to see others. For example, Japan will be here on Thursdays, and other heads of states. I believe there's going to be 38 heads of states that will be here, and so we want to continue to strengthen those relationships, and that's what the president wants to see. It is an important year, the 75th anniversary, and I think all of the work that the president has been able to do will be on full display.
Just one last question. If the president's health were to decline rapidly next week, just kind of out of the blue, have you had any conversations with him, or has he made any comments on if
Absolutely
he would
not.
step aside?
That's a hypothetical. No.
Good morning. There is no longer any doubt that Joe Biden is unfit to be our commander-in-chief. The Biden White House, far-left House Democrats, and the mainstream media are in complete disarray because they know this to be true and have been caught participating in one of the greatest media cover-ups in American history. For the last 3.5 years, House Republicans and the American people have been demanding details about Joe Biden's mental and physical decline. But every time we raise these legitimate concerns, far-left Democrats and their loyal stenographers in the mainstream media rushed to Biden's defense, claiming that the clearly diminished Joe Biden was as sharp as ever and accusing us of peddling conspiracy theories. The cover-up is over and accountability is here. For years, House Republicans have known that Joe Biden is unfit for office. We also know that he will go to any lengths to maintain his grip on power. This is why it is so crucial that we take every possible measure to ensure that the 2024 presidential election is free from election interference and is constitutional. As part of that ongoing effort, House Republicans are bringing to the floor this week Congressman Chip Roy's Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, which requires individuals to provide proof of citizenship when registering to vote in federal elections. Not surprisingly, the Biden White House, whose far-left open border agenda has let in millions, over 10 million illegal immigrants, is against our bill. This is a very simple and logical concept rooted in the Constitution. Only American citizens should vote in American elections. Also this week, House Republicans are moving Mary Miller's CRA to stop Joe Biden's radical efforts to roll back women's rights and change Title IX to allow biological men to access women and girls' bathrooms, locker rooms, and sports. Next week, we are looking forward to uniting in Milwaukee behind President Donald J. Trump's America First agenda, which created the greatest economy in generations, the securest border in modern history, the lowest gas prices in years, and peace through strength around the world. With that, we're honored to be joined by Chip Roy, who is leading the SAVE Act this week on the floor. Chip.
Go ahead, Mary.
To follow on that, the president has made clear he's done talking about the debate. It is time to move on.
Yeah.
But some of his allies have made clear they're very much still in this wait-and-see mode. I mean, Senator Patty Murray saying he must do more to demonstrate he can campaign strong enough to beat Trump. Senator Durbin saying he's concerned whether this is just a one-off or a larger issue. So I guess, how worried is the president that despite his best efforts, he's not going to be able to close the book on these concerns?
And Mary, I appreciate the question, but as you know, there are hundreds of members in Congress, hundreds. And I laid out a list of folks who have supported him. We've heard from Senator Coons, we've heard from Senator Fetterman. There's support there as well for him. And so we just want to make sure that we put that out there as well.
The party united behind him,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. And look, Representative Gregory Meeks said, coming out of the Congressional Democrats meeting, said that they're united. And you just saw the Dem Caucus leadership take questions from some of your colleagues over at the Capitol. So that is important as well to note. But look, he had a bad night. We've talked about it. He understands people's concerns. We have been out there, as we have been in previous months, but out there obviously in the past 10 days, more than 10 days now, since the debate. And you see from his engagement with everyday people on the ground You see him with congressional members who are showing their support, speaking on behalf of this president while we're on the ground in that respective state or commonwealth, being where we were in Pennsylvania on Sunday.
Tomorrow, Maria will issue her report on this issue, which I think is very important. I hope people will give it a look. No, I want to call on woman first. Talking about abortion, sure.
Are you confident that President Biden has what it takes to win in November and serve the next 4 years?
As I've said before, I'm with Joe.
Senator
Yes.
Schumer. Based on the differences of opinion in the Democratic Party about the president, his ability to serve 4 more years, that there might be a challenge at the convention, and if there is there the ability to throw out the virtual nomination?
As I've said before, I'm with Joe.
Senator Schumer.
Yes, no, don't yell. Way in the back, right there.
I'm curious for your reaction to Senator Whitehouse and Senator Wyden's request that the Department of Justice appoint a special counsel to investigate Clarence Thomas. Is that something you'd support?
Look, the bottom line is the Supreme Court is way off the deep end, and in so many different ways, as we've documented today. And Senator Whitehouse, Senator Durbin have many ways of trying to get to the bottom of this, clean up the court in a variety of ways, and I'm looking carefully at all of them. Go ahead, Manu.
Senator Murray, who just left, made a statement last night saying that she believes that Biden needs to do more to demonstrate that he's strong enough to defeat Donald Trump, articulate a vision, and must seriously consider the best way to preserve his legacy. Do you agree with her sentiment?
As I've said before, I'm with Joe.
But Senator Schumer, doesn't
Thank you, everybody.
Democrats...
You said just a minute ago that the president wants to turn the page on the last couple of weeks and get to the other side of this, where the White House wants to. Has President Biden seen enough support over the last 36 hours from fellow Democrats in Congress to now start turning the page and look ahead? I mean, what's his reaction been to what he's seen since Congress has gotten back?
I mean, it's very similar to how I answered the question to one of your colleagues. He's very much focused on what's ahead, right? He's very much focused. He has a fulsome, robust schedule in the next 2 weeks that we laid out for all of you. He wants to focus on that, the messages that he wants to come out when he goes to Texas next week, when he goes to Vegas next week. He's going to be on the road on Friday as well. And I also want to say, look, he is proud of the Congressional Black Caucus, who said they have, he has their support. The Congressional Hispanic Caucus did the same, and other members of Congress, obviously. And so, look, he wants to move forward. As your colleague said, definitely unite the party, continuing to unite the party. We heard from Representative Meeks, who said the Democrats, the Congressional Democrats, came out of the meeting today united. I think that's important to note. But the president's going to move forward. He's going to move forward, and he's going to continue to go out there, engage with the American public, like you saw him do in Pennsylvania, and he's going to stay focused on that.
Does he feel like he's weathered this storm, so to speak?
Look, I think that he is more determined than ever to continue to get the job done, to continue to build an economy that works for all, to continue to make sure that we have a middle class, right, that is strong, right, that we don't have a trickle-down economy, that we economy that's built from the bottom up, middle out. That's what he wants to continue to do. I think this week with the NATO summit, the 75th year of NATO, let's not forget, NATO has helped to protect Americans and also protect the world, and what it's been able to do for the past 75 years. You're going to see the president engaging with 32 leaders of this alliance. I think that's really important. That's, again, on behalf of the American people. So he wants to do that. He has a lot on his mind, and as it deals with making sure we deliver for the American people, that's what he's going to focus on. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Thank you all for being here on what is, I believe, the smallest crowd ever assembled for a Republican press conference. I don't know where everybody is this morning. Oh, they're chasing down the Democrats for a change. This is a really interesting phenomenon. And the reason it's so noteworthy, and the reason that most of the Hill press are following the Democrats around now, we had almost no one outside our conference meeting this morning. Normally, you're all there gathered in the hallways. They're busy because they're chasing down our Democrat colleagues and asking them about Joe Biden's mental acuity and their efforts to cover it up. And that's what it's been. I mean, we could give you example after example after example. It's all on tape. It's all on record. Everybody knows it. Democrats, our colleagues, for 3.5 years have been covering up this glaring problem. The staff in the White House have been covering it up, and so have the Democrats in Congress. Just last month, I brought a couple of examples. Representative Dan Goldman said Biden was sharper than anyone he'd spoken to, and that he has, quote, a photographic memory, unquote. Representative Eric Swalwell said that Biden put many of us to shame with his energy. I mean, there are example after example after example, leading Democrats and noteworthy Democrats on the Hill who have not been in the dark about this. They've been saying things I think most of them understand is simply not true, and they've misled the American people. And this is dangerous. We have the NATO summit going on, the 75th anniversary of NATO here, all of our guests from around the world. What we're projecting from the White House is not strength right now, at a very dangerous time around the world, and that's why the American people are so alarmed by this. That's why the polls say that most of the Americans, people understand that Joe Biden is not fit for that office, and it's a terrible thing. The Democrats have misled us, and they need to be held accountable for that. They've also...
Thank you. Gentleman's time's expired. With that, go to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Lawler. He's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, when was the last time you met with President Biden in person?
I meet with President Biden over a wide range of issues, the economy, China,
When was the last
Russia.
time you met with him in person?
I'm not going to comment on my meetings with the president. Those are private.
Well, as a cabinet secretary, have you noticed any mental or cognitive decline in any of these meetings?
The president is extremely effective in the meetings that I've been in with him. That includes many international meetings that are multi-hour, like his meetings with President Xi. I've met with him, with other leaders who are in.
So are you testifying that you have not seen any mental or cognitive decline?
Mr. Chairman, point of inquiry. She's not a physician.
She's a member of the
She's
cabinet.
not. You're asking her a medical question.
Let's keep the comments to the subject.
It's not a medical question. It's her interpretation as a member of the cabinet. I'm just asking what your testimony is.
Taken down. Mr. Chairman, I move to have those words taken down. She is not a physician.
Will people please not go between the witness and the committee? Okay. Mr. Lawler, she's answered the question. Let's move on. You're recognized for the balance of your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, have there been any discussions among cabinet secretaries about invoking the 25th Amendment?
No.
Okay. The supplemental appropriations bill enacted in April contained two of my bills, the SHIP Act, which requires the imposition of sanctions on foreign ports and refineries that knowingly process Iranian oil, and the Iran-China Energy Sanctions Act, which requires you to close correspondent accounts for Chinese banks if they are involved in petroleum transactions with the Central Bank of Iran or another sanctioned Iranian financial institution. This applies no matter how minor or infrequent the transaction may be. In March, General Kurilla, the head of CENTCOM, testified before the Armed Services Committee that Iran continues to sell 90% of its oil to China, funding Tehran's subversive activities across the region. That is a quote. Anyone who participates in the sale of Iranian oil plays a role in helping the regime evade U.S. sanctions. Engaging in this trade is tantamount to aiding and abetting a terrorist state, and it must end. These sanctions create a significant financial incentive for ports and refineries to stop dealing in Iranian oil, or else lose access to the U.S. economy. Since Joe Biden took office, Iranian oil sales are up over $100 billion. $100 billion increase. Can you speak to where you are in implementing these laws, the SHIP Act and the Iran-China Energy Sanctions Act, and will you commit to swiftly implementing these sanctions as required by the law?
So I need to look into the details of where we are with respect to these particular acts, but we have put in place a wide array of sanctions on Iran, including for oil dealings. We have sanctioned firms in other countries that are involved with the Iran oil trade, and we are constantly evaluating additional sanctions to put in place.
Since the supplemental aid package passed, have you had any meetings on the SHIP Act or the Iran-China Energy Sanctions Act?
I have regular meetings with my staff.
Have you had any discussions on those two provisions of the supplemental?
I've discussed with them Iranian sanctions.
Specifically, the SHIP Act and the Iran-China Energy Sanctions
Honestly, that's not the way we organize our discussions. We talk about our Iranian program and what we're doing.
So I'm going to interpret your answer as to be no, you have not had discussions on the SHIP Act and the Iran-China Energy Sanctions Act, and the Treasury Department has not advanced sanctions with respect to those two laws.
I have not said that.
Well, is it yes or no?
I have had discussions with them, and it's covered a wide array of sanctions issues in connection with Iran. I'm not sure specifically which actions have to do with which aspects of the law.
I sent a
and
letter.
That's not how it's presented to me.
I sent a letter specifically on the SHIP Act and the Iran-China Energy Sanctions Act to you and Secretary Blinken a few weeks ago. We have not heard back. We certainly would appreciate a detailed response as to what has been done to implement the law that was passed under the supplemental aid package. And in my remaining time, have you communicated the sanctions risk to Beijing at all with respect to the Iran-China Energy Sanctions Act?
We have discussed with them our concerns about Chinese businesses and others involved with.
But not
these
specifically
matters.
on the Iran-China Energy Sanctions Act.
We have discussed an array of sanctions issues.
Okay.
Gentlemen's time has expired. Just a reminder to the committee that getting into the personal business effects of the president as well as Mr. Trump is inappropriate for this committee.
Okie dokie. Good afternoon. Thanks for waiting. All right. So I want to thank Senators Murray and Cantwell for joining us. Now, this week, Senate Democrats intend to pick up where we left off in June by bringing every single member of this chamber to task on a woman's fundamental right to choose. Tomorrow, the Senate will vote on the Reproductive Freedom for Women Act, hoping to finally put women's health care decisions up to them once and for all. I thank Senator Murray for leading this bill and every single female senator on our side for co-sponsoring it. And the resolution asks some very simple questions. Where do senators stand on freedom of choice? Do we believe a woman should have a basic right to health care? Do we agree that the rights protected under Roe should be protected under federal law? Of course, Democrats have made it abundantly clear where we stand. Yes, we emphatically believe that women should be free to make their own health care choices. All year long, Senate Republicans have shown everyone how out of touch they are with the mainstream. Senate Republicans have shown that for all their attempts to sound moderate on reproductive care, when it comes time to vote, they will choose MAGA extremism over the Republican people. When Senate Republicans blocked federal protections for contraceptives, they chose MAGA extremism over the American people. This is no surprise. This is no mistake. They did the same thing when they blocked federal protections for IVF. They chose MAGA extremism over the American people. And when Donald Trump announced he would nominate hard-right justices to the Supreme Court for the explicit purpose of overturning Roe, these same Senate Republicans enthusiastically voted to confirm them. Not once, not twice, 3 times. So make no mistake, the MAGA hard rights attacks on women aren't done. First it was abortion, then contraception, then IVF. What's next? If they get the chance, they will push for their ultimate goal of a national abortion ban. That's why voting on legislation protecting access to these things, like contraception and IVF, was so important, and that's why affirming a woman's fundamental right to choose is so important as well. Let me turn it over to Patty.
Well, Republicans are desperately trying to rewrite their abortion record. Donald Trump, a convicted felon and a liar, is trying to tell us he doesn't know anything about Project 2025, the playbook that was written by some of his top advisors. He may as well be saying he has no idea who named Trump Tower. We all know Donald Trump ended Roe v. Wade. We all know Republicans championed that for decades, and we know that Trump will absolutely ban abortion nationwide. Remember when he said he had no health care plan over and over again? And there was no plan, just a push to tear down the ACA and rip away coverage for millions. Pay attention to what they do, not what they say. And we have all seen the horrific fallout because of Donald Trump's actions. Women denied abortion care even when their health is at stake, forced to travel thousands of miles for care, and dragged through a pregnancy against their will. No one is going to forget, especially when Republicans continue to stand with the most radical anti-abortion extremists at every turn. I'm not just talking about voting against restoring Roe. Republicans here in Congress signed briefs against medication abortion and abortion for medical emergencies. They have supported extreme fetal personhood bills and opposed the right to birth control and IVF. Where does it end? Is there a right they will not trample on for anti-abortion extremists? Today, we are going to see if we can protect a woman's right to cross state lines for health care, to protect a doctor's right to provide legal care to any patient that comes to them, again in states where abortion is legal, and ensure more health professionals can get critical training in comprehensive reproductive health care, which can save lives. This is basic, common sense stuff, so the response should be pretty telling. After all, how are Republicans going to pretend they think it should just be state politicians overruling women, already in extreme position, by the way? But how do you say that and then have no problem with targeting doctors in states like mine where abortion is legal, or trapping women who would travel out of state for care? If Republicans block these bills today, I don't know how they are going to try and explain that away. But I can tell you right now, it is not going to work. And finally, tomorrow, we will vote on the Reproductive Freedom for Women Act, a bill I introduced alongside every Democratic woman in the Senate and Leader Schumer. Our bill is simple. It is a plain up or down vote on whether you support women being able to make their own reproductive health care decisions. Doesn't force anything, doesn't cost anything. It's a half-page bill saying women should have the basic freedom to make their own decisions about their health care. Seriously, that is all it is. So once again, we will see where Democrats and Republicans stand on a very simple question. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Senator Cantwell.
Thank you. It's good to be here with Majority Leader Schumer and my colleague, Senator Murray, and I thank her for her tremendous leadership for a very, very long time on women's reproductive health. 2 years after Dobbs, Women are being denied emergency care and life-saving treatment. Hardships are being placed on women and families after they have to travel very long distances to get care. And our healthcare system, even in pro-choice states, are being strained. My office released a snapshot report on the 2-year Dobbs anniversary, and it found that one Idaho woman per week is being airlifted across the border just to get emergency abortion care. These are often women who desperately want to have children. They are experiencing a heartbreaking complication. They need an abortion to protect their life, their health, and their future fertility, and they are not getting that in Idaho. They're being airlifted out at one person a week. My snapshot report also highlighted that OB and GYNs are fleeing Idaho because how difficult it is for them to be effective at delivering care under this draconian law. Mark my words, even though President Trump said at the debate that the court fixed this, they didn't fix anything. It is creating deserts, it's pushing people across the border to our state, and it found even that from some of the providers there that Idaho rape survivors are being denied a Plan B pill to stop unwanted pregnancies. So the Washington-Idaho border is a microcosm of the havoc that these laws are wreaking on those states and even on pro-choice states. Tomorrow, the women senators will be releasing a report highlighting the devastating impacts of the Dobbs decision across the nation. At least 23 million women of reproductive age nationwide live in states with abortion bans. That's 23 million women who won't have access to care if they become pregnant and need to have an abortion. Donald Trump knows that denying health care to these women is a losing position. That is why he tried to reposition the other night, claiming that he believes in exceptions. Well, the exceptions that he's talking about are a farce. Women, in reality, are in life-threatening situations and are being denied access to care. During the last week of presidential debate, Trump also said that you have to follow your heart. Well, these bans are heartless. We're hearing from women who have to travel with their children to faraway places and stay close to an airport that is close to a hospital just to keep down the cost of care. Consider the case of a pregnant woman in Idaho who woke up bleeding heavily and had to get airlifted out of the state for emergency treatment because her doctor said, quote, he wasn't willing to risk his career to help her. In a state where abortion is legal, this woman would have been treated, no question about it. And Trump saying at the debate, but nothing is great about treating women. He basically said that what had happened with Dobbs was a great thing. There's nothing great about treating women as a second-class citizen. 8 years ago, Trump said, quote, there has to be some form of punishment for abortion, end quote. And now he says states get to decide. But as my colleagues have said, Republicans have said no to protecting access to IVF, they have said no to contraception, and they have said no to protecting abortion rights. That's right, MAGA Republicans are stepping on your constitutional rights. That is why we have to ask our colleagues in the Senate whether they agree with that, whether they agree or they're going to stand up and help women get access to health care that they deserve.
Great job. And tomorrow, Maria will issue her report on this issue, which I think is very important. I hope people will give it a look.
Senator
No, I want to call on the woman first.
Thank you, Leader Schumer.
Talking about abortion. Sure.
Are you confident that President Biden has what it takes to win in November and serve the next 4 years?
As I've said before, I'm with Joe.
Senator
Yes.
Schumer. Based on the differences of opinion in the Democratic Party about the president, his ability to serve 3 more years, that there might be a challenge at the convention, and if there is there the ability to throw out the virtual nomination?
As I've said before, I'm with Joe.
Senator Schumer,
Yes, no, don't yell, way in the back, right there.
I'm curious for your reaction to Senator Whitehouse and Senator Wyden's request that the Department of Justice appoint a special counsel to investigate Clarence Thomas. Is this something you'd support?
Look, the bottom line is the Supreme Court is way off the deep end, and in so many different ways, as we've documented today. And Senator Whitehouse, Senator Durbin have many ways of trying to get to the bottom of this, clean up the court in a variety of ways, and I'm looking carefully at all of them. Go ahead, Manu.
Senator Murray, who just left, made a statement last night saying that she believes that Biden needs to do more to demonstrate that he's strong enough to defeat Donald Trump, articulate a vision, and must seriously consider the best way to preserve his legacy. Do you agree with her sentiment?
As I've said before, I'm with Joe.
But Senator Schumer, doesn't
Thank
it
you,
leave
everybody.
Democrats in a difficult position? What do you say?
More international when it comes to cricket.
Fair. Fair enough. I don't need to start, so.
No? All right. Let's start with NATO and the summit. So the Secretary has had a couple meetings today already. I guess summit hasn't yet kicked off, but will tonight. Are you aware that he's heard any concerns from the people that he's spoken to so far about President Biden?
No, I'm not aware of him having heard any concerns.
Have you
as of yet.
asked, or are you deliberately trying to avoid?
I talked to him an hour ago, and he did not mention having any concerns with anyone. Or I'm sorry, did not mention having heard concerns from anyone.
So he has his own concerns.
No, that is not a fair implication. No, obviously not. He has spoken to this quite clearly. Yeah.
Okay, but I mean, does that mean? Do you know if they've come up? Have they come up with?
They have not.
Anyone else?
They have not come up in. Well, I can't speak for anyone else all around the government, obviously, but no, I'm not aware of anyone raising concerns with the secretary or anyone else from the State Department about the president. What we consistently hear from allies and partners around the world when we travel the world and when people come here is that they are grateful for the leadership the president has shown, in this case, when we talk about NATO, in expanding NATO and convincing allies to raise their collective support for NATO's defense and deterrence measures, and his leadership in rallying an international coalition to push back on Russia's aggression in Ukraine, among many other foreign policy measures.
Okay, and then is there any State Department component to the aid package that's supposed to be announced today that you're aware of?
So I don't want to get it. It's a nice way to try to get me into talking about something that has not yet been announced. So, let me answer it elliptically. So, elliptically. So, there will be new air defense capabilities announced during this summit, both by the United States and by other countries. There will be other new defense commitments announced, and of course, the State Department does play a role in all of those.
Right. Well, other than I think that at this event this morning, he said something about $7 million in protective gear equipment for Ukrainian women's armed forces. Is there so you're saying that beyond that,
there will be
beyond the U.S. component of that, there will be more from state.
Yeah, we will be announcing across the government. Some of that will include State Department components, political, economic, and military measures to support Ukraine. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
The 7 million. Sorry, apologies. The 7 million secretary said is it NATO countries. So how much of it is the US?
Let me get details to you offline.
I have another one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was wondering if you have any, if the final communique has been finalized or definitively, the wording that the NATO summit leaders would give to Ukraine on this bridge. You guys call it a bridge to membership. There's talks. There's some capitals, the Baltic states specifically. They want the word irreversible in the final communique. My understanding that it's been negotiated. Can you say where it stands?
I obviously don't want to say what the final communique will say. There are pieces of the communique that continue to be worked on and negotiated, which is usual for the summit, right? There's a lot that comes in those NATO communiques. You've seen them before, and some of that goes right up to the last minute. I will say that a significant amount of time has gone into discussions about the wording about Ukraine's path to membership. The Secretary talked with President Zelensky directly about this when we were in Ukraine several months ago. It was a significant portion of discussion at the NATO foreign ministers meeting last month that the Secretary attended in Prague. And of course, it has been the subject of ongoing discussions between our building and other NATO members. And of course, Julie Smith, our ambassador to NATO, being in the lead on that over the past few weeks. I will say, I think we have landed in a place, and you will all see this when the language comes forward, that makes clear, as we have said, that that Ukraine's future is in NATO. And the communique will make that very clear, and you'll all get to see the language and talk about it when it's publicly released.
I mean, is it still being negotiated, to your knowledge?
There may be pieces of that part we have largely, I will just say that language we have largely settled on. There are other pieces of the communique, and maybe some smaller pieces of that piece of it that we're still negotiating as well. That part is largely settled, yeah. Say.
Thank you. Can I move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't think you were going to ask me a NATO question when I called on you. So.
I do have my NATO question, but let's talk about that. Okay.
Thanks, Chip. It's a big week for House Democrats. They have to figure out what they're going to do about Joe Biden, who recently proved to the world what Republicans have been saying now for years. He's not fit to be president. And they have to twist themselves into a pretzel to explain why they're advocating for letting illegal immigrants vote in our elections. Let us be clear. Only American citizens should have a say in American elections. It's sad that today's Democrat Party has gone so far that this needs to be clarified. No amount of spin changes the fact that Congressman Chip Roy's SAVE Act, which I'm proud to co-sponsor, is simple. It protects American citizens' right to vote by requiring proof of citizenship for voter registration and the removal of non-citizens from voter rolls. Safeguarding our elections should not be a partisan issue. But the Democrats are hell-bent on making it one because it's part of their grand design. First, Joe Biden and the Democrats allowed over 10 million illegal immigrants to invade our country. Now they're opposing efforts to prevent these illegals from voting in federal elections. Don't just take my word for it. Democrats' House leadership has launched a united effort against the SAVE Act. And the Biden administration came out with a statement against this common sense bill as well. If illegal immigrants are not voting in our elections as Democrats contend, then why are they working so hard against this bill? It's no secret what their motives are. And it should be alarming to every American, regardless of their politics. And by the way, there is evidence out there that shows non-citizens have been on voter rolls and voted in U.S. elections. While Democrats work for illegal immigrants, House Republicans are going to continue to work for the American people. Our message, again, is simple. American elections are for Americans only. And with that, I turn it over to our leader, Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Whip.
Senator, do you share the assessment from Senator Bennett that Joe Biden is on track to lose this election?
I think that Joe Biden will win this election if the party unifies behind him and he continues to make his case to the American people effectively and vigorously about the contrast between him and President Trump. I think that he has to continue to be out at town halls, press conferences, meetings with everyday Americans, showing how he is fighting for the American people.
But he's not doing that. He's not doing that.
Phase go on with Democrats doubting his abilities. How much longer can y'all do this?
I think he will continue to make his case to the American people.
But do you think
and he is the one who will decide. There are advisors and supporters who may give him the kind of guidance that he is looking for, but I think ultimately it's his decision to make. I think that this kind of internal debate will end at some point. The question is when.
But I mean, you have to be concerned about his viability, aren't you?
I am deeply concerned about Joe Biden winning this November because it is an existential threat to the country if Donald Trump wins. So I think that we have to reach a conclusion as soon as possible. And I think Joe Biden, as the Democratic nominee, has my support. He has a lot of broad support throughout the country. He's working vigorously to try to quell the concerns that have been raised. And I think that's his task right now. He can do it, but there will be a question mark for some time.
But it doesn't seem to be working, so what will it take?
I think that there will be a consensus at some point. I can't tell you when, but hopefully it will be as soon as possible.
How critical is the next few days? The president's on the world stage at the NATO summit.
Every day is critical in this election. We have a limited amount of time, and the contrast between Joe Biden and Donald Trump couldn't be clearer, and it has to be drawn for the American people to understand. That's why he has to make his case to not only my colleagues and people in Washington, but throughout the country.
And when you say soon, do you mean this week? I mean, is it wise to do this during the Republican National Convention?
There is no question that Joe Biden still has a task ahead. How quickly he can complete it in terms of making his case to the American people, it may take a while longer, but as the Democratic nominee, he has my support.
You don't think there should be a replacement candidate at this point?
I'm sorry?
You don't think there should be a replacement candidate at this point?
Joe Biden deserves at least some period of time to continue vigorously and effectively making his case to the American people about the contrast between him and Donald Trump. That is the main focus right now. And if he can make that case effectively, not only here in Washington, but throughout the country, I think he will continue to have the nomination, and ultimately it's his decision.
How important is it that...
And I will say this. I have confidence in Joe Biden doing what's right for America. What he believes is right for America is to defeat Donald Trump. And he'll be a pretty good judge of whether that will be possible. We can all advise him. We can raise concerns. Ultimately, the decision is his. And I'm going to continue to raise concerns, but I do think that we need to ultimately unify because the existential threat here is Donald Trump.
It sounds like you're leaving the door open, though, a little bit there.
That's about all.
How important is the press conference tomorrow in an uncontrolled situation like the debate?
I'm not going to speculate on, what may be important.
Senator,
No,
why did you decide now is the time to say something?
Well, I said it in the article, so I'm not going to embellish on that.
Did you give the White House a heads up?
My staff, reached out.
Do you think that if
Schumer know as
Biden
well?
remains the nominee, though, aren't you in a position where you're at odds with your party?
Well, just read my statement.
I did. And I recognize that you say now is the time and that you talk to constituents.
Right.
But ultimately, if he remains the nominee, isn't it harmful?
I'm expressing my opinion. Ultimately, the president's going to have to make his own decision.
Yeah. Is there anything you could hear today that would sort of change your perspective on this?
I think the issue is not about telling us; it's about showing voters that the president is making real efforts.
Are you planning on going to the lunch?
Yes.
Is there anything they could say to ease your concerns at this point? Do you reverse course?
It's a show me, not tell me issue. I think for Americans, it's not so much about individual senators or members of Congress. It's really about the challenge of the everyday campaign.
Can that be proven with one press conference? Or?
No, it's over the course of time.
Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it.
Questions?
Leader Jeffries, NBC News just in the last few minutes moved some reporting that several of President Biden's closest allies now say that he has zero chances of winning. A direct quote is, he needs to drop out from one Biden campaign official. He will never recover from this. After the week and a half that we've had, do you agree? Is it time?
Throughout this week, as House Democrats, we have engaged in a process of talking to each other. Those conversations have been candid, comprehensive, and clear-eyed, and they continue. Until that process has concluded, I'm not going to address what any outside stakeholders may have to say about this matter.
Sir, how much longer can you allow the groping to go on before it ultimately wounds him?
House Democrats, Senate Democrats, and President Biden are unified on the affirmative agenda that we have for the American people related to lowering housing costs or ending price gouging or growing the middle class, defending democracy, and fighting for reproductive freedom. President Biden, House Democrats, and Senate Democrats are also united in pushing back against Project 2025 and the extreme MAGA Republican agenda. That's unifying, not dividing us.
Make it happen. Awesome. Go ahead, Zeke.
Thanks, Mike. In your topper there, you appealed to Democrats to unite behind the president against Donald Trump, except you're seeing more defections, including some more this morning. And last count before he took off, I believe it was 18 House Democrats, maybe more now. Does the president believe that every House Democrat or or Senate Democrat or celebrity that is defecting from his campaign is making it more likely that Donald Trump wins in November?
Well, listen, I think, again, it's important to reiterate the facts, right? Which is what the president has said repeatedly. He is in this race to win it. He is the Democratic nominee, and we are going to defeat Donald Trump in November because Democrats are going to be united in taking on the threat posed by Donald Trump and the Project 2025 agenda. Democratic voters understand that. That's why you've seen throughout the polling after the debate, there's been no fundamental shift in this race. This is going to be a very close, competitive race. That is what the Marist poll has showed. That's what all the polling has showed since the debate. And so what this campaign and this president understands right now is that we're going to continue to go out and put in the work. The president, as he did last night during the NATO press conference, was not only leading on the world stage, but was demonstrating that he is the best person to continue to lead this country right now, but is the best person to take on Donald Trump and defeat him at the ballot box as he did in 2020. So as we hit the stump today in Detroit, as the president hits the stump next week in Texas, in Nevada, across the country, we're going to continue to present a clear choice to the American people between the president, who's fighting every single day for them, and Donald Trump, who poses a fundamental threat to the American people. His Project 2025 agenda would gut checks and balances, allow him to rule as a dictator on day one, as he promises to do out on the stump every single day, would allow him to ban abortion without Congress. And so that is what the president is laser focused on communicating to Democratic voters and voters across the country who understand the fundamental stakes of this election. The president understands that there's still some anxiety on the Hill. I think we all understand that. And that's why he's laser focused on demonstrating that he is the best person to take on Donald Trump and defeat him in November. And that's what this campaign is going to remain focused on over the course of the summer.
Can you run us through?
But Joe just couldn't help himself. Joe Biden cannot lead America. He cannot even lead himself off a stage. Now Americans are drowning in inflation. Insanity spreads like a cancer in our schools. We are closer to World War III than any time in my life. And we are facing an unprecedented invasion of millions of illegal aliens across our southern border. Rioters and looters go free, while Biden and the Democrats persecute American heroes like Donald Trump. Tens of millions of Americans are made to feel like enemies in our own country. An enemy for wanting to defend our border, for not wanting our children indoctrinated in school, for not wanting to erase our history, for praying to our God, saying what we think, and fighting for what we believe. It is no wonder that the heroes who stormed the beaches of Normandy and faced down communism sadly say they don't recognize our country anymore. This is not an accident. The powerful elites in the swamp will say anything to crush and destroy the America First movement. But we will never give up, and neither will Donald J. Trump. I know I speak for patriots everywhere when I say we are fed up. We are outraged about sex trafficking and drug trafficking across our southern border. We are fed up with the forever wars. We are done being told by the radical left to sit down, shut up, and obey. The Democrat vision for America is governed by fear, hatred, and political oppression. Our vision is defined by a love of our country, love for our fellow citizens, and our love of freedom.
Make sure that doesn't happen to us here. Yep.
Talking chemistry, there's much speculation about the chemistry at the top of the Democratic ticket. Your feeling about what's happening there? Maybe your role in them?
I don't know if I should thank you for asking that question, but look, I am supporting the nominee of the Democratic Party. That right now is our president, Joe Biden. So I've been campaigning. I went to Ohio and Indiana last weekend to campaign for President Biden, Vice President Harris, and I'm going to continue to do that. He's apparently going to be our nominee. He's chosen to be our nominee. And so we've got to win, because the alternative is unacceptable for the country and for the future of our nation, for forever, really, could be altered as a result of the election of his opponent, Donald Trump.
Governor, it has been a very hard week for the spring vote community. I saw you put out a statement last night as well.
Yes.
Can you talk about the murder?
Just with Boston Globe. The Republicans seem totally united behind Donald Trump here, and yet we continue to hear reports of Democratic concerns about President Biden at the top of the ticket. We see polling to that extent. They just mentioned Representative Schiff. How do Democrats counter this unified Republican front this fall?
We have to counter it with unity, and the sooner we get past talking about this and talking about what's at stake and what we've heard for the first 3 nights of this convention and what we're going to hear tonight from Donald Trump, the better off we'll be. I mean, a question was just asked about Project 2025. A rose by any other name is still a rose. They are talking about it and what they want to do, and I encourage Americans who are not hearing them say the words Project 2025 on the convention stage to tune into these MAGA rallies. They double down on it every single time, and when they get in front of any type of bigger audience, they try to censor themselves because they know that these issues are deeply unpopular. And I think that all you have to do is look at it. J.D. Vance wants a nationwide abortion ban. He is going to be the poster child for this, as Congresswoman Beatty just said. He wrote an op-ed about wanting to repeal Obamacare in the New York Times. They put the architect of family separation on stage last night and then branded it about talking about that they want to unify this country. There's nothing unifying about that. And so Democrats have to come together to talk about the work that they have done for the past 3.5 years under President Biden, capping prescription drug costs, expanding health care services to our veterans, making sure that they're going to be taken care of when they come home, lowering the cost of prescription drugs for everyone, trying to push for a fair tax code, actually doing something about immigration and not just lying about it. And that is our policy, and that is our stance. And we're going to continue to do everything we can to make sure that we're drawing a very stark contrast between the 2 different visions of this country. And I think that Republicans are showing us exactly who they are.
Can I just follow up quickly for Senator Beatty? Do you think the party at this point can unify behind President Biden, given all the doubts, the public doubts by a lot of your colleagues?
Let me just say I am very comfortable that we will be more unified, because we understand that diversity is our strength. And we are a party of diverse individuals, but we also recognize greater than that unity is our power. So we're having some family discussions. I'm comfortable that we'll work through it. President Biden has given us the answer that he's staying in the race, and we're supporting him.
I agree. We will unite. Our convention is still a few weeks away, but it'll be here before you know it, and you're going to see the unity not just during the Democratic National Convention, but in the days that remain between now and November 5th because of the important work that we have to do on the campaign trail. I would also differ with you on this. What you're going to see from Democrats is unity. What you see from Republicans isn't unity. It's falling in line. Donald Trump has bent this political party to his will. They do not allow for dissent, and that's why you haven't heard it at the convention.
Thanks. Senator Padilla, we know that Chuck Schumer met with President Biden over the weekend. He said that the current election trajectory will cost Democrats the Senate. And our understanding is he's reflecting the view of your caucus. What is your understanding of how your colleagues feel? Are you hearing this concern?
Look, we're Democrats, so of course there's going to be a little diversity in what folks are thinking and feeling. But I can share with you this. In my spare time and with my wife's permission, I serve as a vice chair of the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee. So yes, our incumbents in some of the tougher states are facing tougher elections, but they're doing well. And I do think there's a difference between the presidential campaign, politics and strategy, and state-by-state Senate campaigns, politics and strategy. The raise and share
that front.
Great. I want to get back to that, but first I have to throw Senator Coons a softball. I can't ignore the elephant in the room, but I want to ask you to reflect on another matter that's top of mind. You're a close friend of President Biden, co-chair of his campaign, and I know you're incredibly proud of the achievements of the past 3 years of this administration. But the last 3 weeks must have been incredibly difficult for you, as calls have mounted on Biden to
Great softball so far, Ellen.
I'm sure they're difficult for him. What factors do you think he is weighing or has been weighing as he decides how to proceed?
That's it?
I want to hear the answer, and then I'll
look,
follow
just
up.
to be brief, because this is an internal party matter and a matter of the campaign that is playing out very publicly. I think our president is weighing what he should weigh, which is who is the best candidate to win in November and to carry forward the Democratic Party's values and priorities in this campaign. He has been an exceptional president. He has campaigned effectively. He has led effectively. I'll just briefly reference last week, which was, unless I misremember, the NATO summit.
Right.
And folks like me, who after what was a very bad debate performance said, you got to get out there, you got to do more work, you got to campaign harder, you got to do press conferences, you got to do long-form interviews. He had a week where we had our 31 NATO allies and 5 other heads of state, at least, in Washington, and he chaired bilat after bilat, meeting after meeting, 3 days of a NATO summit, strongest NATO's ever been, did a press conference, did campaign events, did campaign rallies, and there are folks still saying he is not strong enough or capable enough to be our next president. I disagree.
Okay. Certainly.
I'll note for the record that was not really meant to be an applause line, but thank you to the very few of you who applauded.
Have you talked to him recently in the last few days at all?
I'm not going to get into the details of our private conversations, but I am confident he is hearing what he needs to hear from colleagues, from the public, from folks. The number of people who've given me input this week from here, people I grew up with in Delaware, former roommates, ex-girlfriends, people I didn't realize still had my cell phone number. I mean, with all due respect,
What did they say?
Literally people who ride the train with me, people who are my neighbors, people who are journalists, people who are friends. There is a lot of concern and anxiety about this because the stakes are so significant. The consequences of this election are profound. The differences between our two candidates, our likely nominee Joe Biden, the nominee Donald Trump, the differences are stark, and the differences in our parties are stark. And there is a huge amount of concern about the consequences of this election. The one thing that unites every Democrat I've heard from is they believe Donald Trump should not be returned to the White House. And I will say this, not meaning to be overly sharp. His former vice president, Secretary of Defense, Chief of Staff, and National Security Advisor have also said he should not be returned to the White House. And I think we should listen to that group of individuals who had direct experience with his leadership capabilities. I recognize that this is a sharp and partisan issue, and I did not mean to open the can, but you did.
No?
So
Well,
here we are.
Okay. Now I'm going to close it for a little bit because time is running and I have the world to get through here. I don't think we'll get all the way through it, but let me at least talk a little bit about NATO, the summit last week in Washington, and obviously, you know, you mentioned some of the partners that came and met and projected sort of a sense of unity and support for the big issue, Ukraine, right? Ukraine came away with some, but not all, of what it wanted. It got reassurances of an irreversible path to membership, but no official invitation or timeline. Secretary Blinken spoke to this a little in the last panel. But I do want to ask you all, do you think NATO should have provided a clearer path, an official invitation with a timeline to 3 years, whatever it is, to send a signal to Vladimir Putin that the alliance is dead serious about backing Ukraine and is in it for the long term? Okay, anyone?
I think we have taken consistent and strong action before, during, and after Russia's broad spectrum invasion now just over 2 years ago. I think the strategic sharing of intelligence in advance of the invasion, I think building a coalition not just of our NATO allies, but of 50 countries around the world who have burden shared with us and have invested as much as we have. And I think the signals that have been sent, both through munitions, through support, through financial investments, and through what Secretary Blinken was talking about, which is strengthening Ukraine's ability, investing in its munitions industry, I do think we are sending all the signals we need to. I don't think we should say, in this many months, you will be admitted to NATO. But I do think we need to send as strong a signal as we possibly can, that we will continue to fight for Ukraine, we'll continue to invest in Ukraine. Look, Republican support for Ukraine in the Senate has been strong, has been encouraging, has been forceful, and so has Democratic support for Ukraine. There is a lot of attention paid to what is a very small segment of the Republican caucus in the House and Senate that has spoken out against funding. And there have been criticisms of the Biden administration for the timing of weapons deliveries.
Yes.
What I wish we would say with one strong and clear voice is there is a consistent, sustained commitment to Ukraine, regardless of the path forward.
I think it's less important what the timeline is for Ukraine's admission into NATO than it is that we continue to support Ukraine and that Putin not prevail. I don't know anybody who believes... I don't know anybody with any sense of history who believes that Putin will stop at Ukraine. And the Ukrainians have been incredible in terms of their will to fight. And but I do think there's a very important point with regard to NATO. NATO needs to do more. I think that's something President...
From the Biden record is the Kamala Harris record. And given what we know about Joe Biden, Kamala Harris probably did a lot more than Joe Biden does over the last 3.5 years. And while we're on the subject of Joe Biden, can anybody just admit that if Joe Biden is not fit to run for president, he ain't fit to serve as president of the United States either? And if Kamala Harris is too blind or too corrupt to admit to the American people that Joe Biden should have never been in there, she's not fit to serve either. We're going to get them both out of there. We're going to get President Donald J. Trump back in the White House. They both have to go. It's that simple. It really is. Now look, the thing is, I am a member of a community that has been affected by all these terrible policies. I grew up in a working class family. I grew up in a family where kids said, other people said, that kid's not going to turn out to be anything. I remember when I didn't have any hope for my future, I didn't have any hope for my community, I thought that chaos and instability was going to be the narrative of my life, that there was no future. And now I'm running. Now I'm running as Donald J. Trump's vice president. It turned out.
Thank you so much, team. Thank you, thank you. Hello, everyone. I know the last 24 hours have been a whirlwind for everyone on this campaign, and so we wanted to make sure that we brought everyone together to have an opportunity to just thank you all so much. You all had to react quickly and efficiently while I'm sure experiencing a range of emotions. And you know, I want to just say how proud I am of each and every one of you all and of this incredible team and what we've been able to build together, especially during some of these most critical times for our campaign. But despite all of the changes, one thing remains true. We are going to win in November. Now, yesterday we all read the president's letter where he shared his decision with the country. And in true Joe Biden fashion, as he's done throughout his entire career, the president has put country first. Now, it's not lost on me or anyone else in this room that under his and Vice President Harris's leadership, we have made incredible progress together. America now has the strongest economy. We've lowered prescription drug costs and expanded affordable health care. We've passed the first gun safety legislation in 30 years and so much more. But all of these accomplishments are on the line this election. Our rights, our freedoms, our very democracy is at stake. And that's why the president endorsed Vice President Harris's candidacy, because he knows that she is the most qualified candidate to beat Donald Trump, to serve as our next president of the United States, and to continue delivering progress for the American people. And now, I'd like to introduce a man who we all admire and respect because he has done and continues to do so much for our country. Mr. President, thank you for calling in today. Over to you.
Julie, if I didn't have COVID, I'd be sitting there with you, standing there with you. I'm so proud of what you've all done. And but this COVID has keep me out of people's hair for the next 3 or 4 days. But I'm going to be on the road, and I'm not going anywhere. It's kept me away a little bit, but you know, I want people to remember that what we have done has been incredible. And we get so much more we're going to get done. And so I want to say hello to Kamala if she can hear me. I know she's going to be speaking shortly. And I want to say to the team, embrace her. She's the best. I want to call today to thank everybody in this effort. I know yesterday's news was surprising and it was hard for you to hear, but it was the right thing to do. I know it's hard because you poured your heart and soul into me. So help us win this thing. Help me get this nomination. Help me win the nomination, and then go on to win the presidency. But you know, you're an amazing team. But we've got a great. I think we made the right decision. I know how hard you've worked, how many sacrifices you've made, and so many of you uprooted your lives for me, and the kind of commitment few people make for anything these days. But you made it. And I've been honored and humbled. I mean, this is from the bottom of my heart. My word is a Biden, for all you've done for me and my family. And we built the best campaign in organization in history. I've been doing this, I always kid and say, I know I'm only 40, but I've been around a long time. I don't know of a better campaign organization, grassroots campaign. You know, we have over 230 offices opened. We have over 2,000 paid staff. And we have literally several thousand volunteers on a regular basis, thousands of them. And they've been relentless and tireless in reaching out and contacting voters. The leadership of this campaign has been amazing. Jen O'Malley Dillon, Julie Quinn, Michael Tyler, Rob Flaherty, Rufus on raising money, and so many more. You built this team, you brought them together, you brought us together, you've inspired them, and you've done what leaders do. Now we got to, the name has changed at the top of the ticket, but the mission hasn't changed at all. And by the way, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be out there in the campaign with her, with Kamala. I'm going to be working like hell, both as a sitting president, getting legislation passed, as well as in campaigning. What we still need to save this democracy. And Trump is still a danger to the community. He's a danger to the nation. And just ask my foreign policy colleagues, my counterparts, and other people around the world and at home. Look, so I'm hoping you'll give every bit of your heart and soul that you gave to me to Kamala. And I want you to know, I won't be on the ticket, but I'm still going to be fully engaged. I've got 6 months left of my presidency. I'm determined to get as much done as I possibly can, both foreign policy and domestic policy. Keep lowering costs for families, continue to speak out on guns and child care, elder care, prescription drugs, and climate. Climate still is the existential threat that we face, and if we don't win this thing, it's all in jeopardy. And we got to keep working for an end to the war in Gaza. I'll be working very closely with the Israelis and with the Palestinians to try to work out how we can get the Gaza war to end and Middle East peace and get all those hostages home. I think we're on a verge of being able to do that. And we got to keep our alliances together. It's critically important. It took a while for me to build these alliances. Most of these my colleagues have acknowledged that, but it's critically important for our safety and security. And I know I'll be doing whatever Kamala wants me or needs me to do in addition. So let me be real clear. We're still fighting in this fight together. I'm not going anywhere. And I want you to know you've always had my back, and I promise you, I will always have your back. And I'm anxious for you all to hear from Kamala. So thank you, Julie. You're the best.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. President.
Thank you. I'm sticking around. I'm going to listen.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. President, again, for taking time to join our call today. And, as the President said, we are full steam ahead in supporting the Vice President, and we are seeing incredible enthusiasm.
My fellow Americans, I'm speaking to you tonight from behind the resolute desk in the Oval Office. In this sacred space, I'm surrounded by portraits of extraordinary American presidents. Thomas Jefferson wrote the immortal words that guide this nation. George Washington, who showed us presidents are not kings. Abraham Lincoln, who implored us to reject malice. Franklin Roosevelt, who inspired us to reject fear. I revere this office, but I love my country more. It's been the honor of my life to serve as your president. But in the defense of democracy, which is at stake, I think is more important than any title. I draw strength and I find joy in working for the American people. But this sacred task of perfecting our union is not about me. It's about you, your families, your futures. It's about we, the people. We can never forget that. And I never have. I've made it clear that I believe America is at an inflection point. One of those rare moments in history when the decisions we make now will determine our fate of our nation and the world for decades to come. America's going to have to choose between moving forward or backward, between hope and hate, between unity and division. We have to decide, do we still believe in honesty, decency, respect, freedom, justice, and democracy? In this moment, we can see those we disagree with not as enemies, but as fellow Americans. Can we do that? Does character in public life still matter? I believe I know the answer to these questions because I know you, the American people. And I know this: we are a great nation because we are good people. When you elected me to this office, I promised to always level with you, to tell you the truth. And the truth, the sacred cause of this country, is larger than any one of us. And those of us who cherish that cause cherish it so much. A cause of American democracy itself. We must unite to protect it. You know, in recent weeks, it's become clear to me that I need to unite my party in this critical endeavor. I believe my record as president, my leadership in the world, my vision for America's future, all merited a second term. But nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy. That includes personal ambition. So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. That's the best way to unite our nation. I ran for president 4 years ago because I believed and still do that the soul of America was at stake. The very nature of who we are was at stake. And that's still the case. America's an idea stronger than any army, bigger than any ocean, more powerful than any dictator or tyrant. It's the most powerful idea in the history of the world. That idea is that we hold these truths to be self-evident. We're all created equal, endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. We've never fully lived up to it, to this sacred idea, but we've never walked away from it either. And I do not believe the American people will walk away from it now. In just a few months, the American people will choose the course of America's future. I made my choice. I've made my views known. I would like to thank our great Vice President Kamala Harris. She's experienced, she's tough, she's capable. She's been an incredible partner to me and a leader for our country. Now the choice is up to you, the American people. When you make that choice, remember the words of Benjamin Franklin hanging on my wall here in the Oval Office, alongside the busts of Dr. King and Rosa Parks and Cesar Chavez. When Ben Franklin was asked, as he emerged from the convention going on, whether the founders have given America a monarchy or republic, Franklin's response was, a republic, if you can keep it. A republic, if you can keep it. Whether we keep our republic is now in your hands. My fellow Americans, it's been the privilege of my life to serve this nation for over 50 years. Nowhere else on earth could a kid with a stutter, from modest beginnings in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Claymont, Delaware, one day sit behind the resolute desk in the Oval Office as President of the United States. But here I am. That's what's so special about America. We're a nation of promise and possibilities, of dreamers and doers, of ordinary Americans doing extraordinary things. I've given my heart and my soul to our nation, like so many others. I've been blessed a million times in return with the love and support of the American people. I hope you have some idea how grateful I am to all of you. The great thing about America is here, kings and dictators do not rule, the people do. History is in your hands. The power is in your hands. The idea of America lies in your hands. We just have to keep faith, keep the faith, and remember who we are. We're the United States of America, and there's simply nothing beyond our capacity when we do it together. So let's act together, preserve our democracy. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops.